Hey, welcome to Project Recovery, a podcast about addiction. More importantly, it's about recovery. I'm Casey Scott. That's Dr. Matt Woolley. He's a clinical psychologist and just an all-around jovial guy today.
Thanks, buddy.
You know, you came in with some energy. You came in with some hotness.
Well, we've been, you and Josh and I had been swapping songs via text, and you didn't like my songs. You didn't think they were funny.
Well, I'm not a big fan of the Monty Python. I'm just not.
You guys were sending real songs. I was sending Monty Python songs.
Yeah, I mean, I never really got into that, the Monty Python.
Well, you're not. I've been thinking about it. You're not really silly. I don't think you're a silly. Your kind of humor isn't silliness.
It's silliness if like it's self-deprecating. I don't mind doing silliness on myself.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like, so here's a fun fact. Okay. And so earlier this week, I got a call from my ex-wife.
Oh yeah.
She goes, "We got a little bit of a problem." And I go, "Oof, that's never good." You know, when the ex-wife's calling you saying we got a problem.
It's a little bit of a problem.
Well, my middle child, Frankie, she got dress coded at school.
Oh.
Yeah, so...
do they still do that? They still dress code? I thought they just gave up on that.
No, they dress coded. Now, here's the deal. Everybody's wearing tank tops and halter tops. And they're getting shorter and shorter. And I'm getting madder and madder because I am paying full price for less than a shirt. Right? You know what I mean? I was like, well, it should be cheaper.
At least get some breakaways.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Because you're not using that much fabric. Right. Why am I paying so much?
Well, designer brands.
So me and the ex-wife get together. We got to sit down with my daughter. We got to talk about, what's appropriate.
What was she wearing?
She was wearing a halter top, which was a tank top. And right now, mom jeans are in, so everybody's hiking the jeans all the way up.
Right.
And then the halter top, and that's how they're getting away with it.
It's not a good look. It's a weird look, don't you think?
Well,
the kids these days.
They love it.
I know.
And so we had to sit her down and talk about it, and it was embarrassing to her because, my ex-wife had to bring her some change of clothing, and, it was just kind of this parental moment, that we had to talk about. And I had to sit her down, and I was like, hey,
Did you, now, as, parents, but you're divorced, do you sit down together? Do you show unity that way?
We did a joint call.
A call.
Yeah, I mean, we co-parent very well together.
Over Zoom?
No,
Zoom
well,
parenting?
it was just like she was in the car and I was in the car, and then they just put it on speaker.
Gotcha.
And we had this talk, and I said, I go, Frankie, I get it. You know what I mean? I know everybody's wearing it.
Right.
But don't get sucked into that. I want people to know you because you're
to the fashion. Or?
Yeah, you know what I mean. Just I don't want to hear everybody's doing it as an excuse. Either own it. But don't do it because you're following other people.
Well, that's the classic tale as old as time, right?
And I go, Frankie, when I'm out and about and people meet me and they know you, they tell me how wonderful you are. They tell me how vivacious, how kind, how caring, how funny you are. Mm-hmm. No one ever says, she's amazing, she's got the shortest shirts ever. I said, that's not, that,
right.
That, I don't want that to be what you're known for.
Right. Short shirts.
And so she kind of got it, and we talked about it. And children, they make a mountain out of a molehill. Mm-hmm. And so it was kind of it was a little.
Did she cry? Was
she
upset?
There was some crying.
Okay.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Because I think it was embarrassing. You know what I mean? And
you weren't hard on her.
I wasn't hard on her. I think just the whole situation was embarrassing.
Gotcha. Yeah, I could see that.
And so we had to talk.
And to be fair, at that age, all you want to be is to fit in and be like everyone else. You don't want to get called out.
Well, how many people have we had on the podcast who was just looking for a community, and the most welcoming one was the one who smoked weed and drank beer?
Exactly.
And so
in Morgan, we call them the hard guys.
Yeah, well, we call them the parking lot crew at my high school.
Yeah.
And so I just was trying to use this as a kind of a learning tool. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Flash forward to today.
Yeah.
I'm live on TV. I'm
wearing a halter top?
No, well, I'm at the IFA, Intermountain Farmers Association.
Right.
Because it's baby chick days.
Is it? And
I had the bright idea where I was just going to wear overalls and no shirt.
That is a good look on you, Casey.
So I rocked it at the very first hit. And as soon as we got off TV, the producer called me and goes, "Put a shirt on." So I had to call Frankie today and go, we both got dress coded this week.
There you go. I love it. I love it. Put a shirt on. That's great.
And so,
so the message is for people that want to watch you in the morning, they need to get you from the beginning of the show.
Anything goes at 5:45.
Yeah. After that, you might have, been
dress
reprimanded.
Coded. Yeah. But that's what recovery has given me, is the opportunities to have these conversations with my kids. You know what I mean? To be present.
Well, I want to compliment you and your ex-wife for doing it together.
Oh, yeah.
That's not an easy task, because people get divorced for a reason, right? And I think for kids, that's wonderful if divorced parents can show some unity on those sorts of things.
People ask me all the time, how is my relationship with my ex-wife? And it's as good as it can be. You know what I mean?
I think you have a great. Yeah.
We co-parent well. We talk, almost every day, if not every other day, about our kids. If she can't pick them up, I pick them up, or her husband does, or my girlfriend does. Like last night, Frankie, the girl we were talking about, my middle child, she just made it to the drill team again. And so we were all there waiting for her to come out. Me and my girlfriend, my ex-wife and her husband, and, giving her flowers, taking pictures, and it's cool. And so I'm very fortunate in that way.
Yeah.
And speaking of fortunate, on our Facebook page, Project Recovery Facebook page, the letter that my daughter wrote 3 years ago, about my addiction through her eyes.
It was a school. What was the
narrative?
School narrative about, what was the topic? Just something important to you, or
just something that has changed your life.
Oh, that's it. Changed your life. So she wrote this letter,
and then I read it on the podcast, and then we put it on.
And it's one of the only times I've seen you tear up,
full on cry.
Yeah.
And I get emotional every time I think about it, because this letter has been such a blessing to my family. And when it first was released, it went viral. And I think today it's got over 6 million views.
Yeah.
It's done some amazing things for my family, and the fact that it's one of the reasons why we got on the TV show Survivalist. And we've been on the Today Show. We've been on countless podcasts and other news stations around the country.
Well, I think it was such an authentic, genuine expression of what her experience was like with you as an alcoholic. It was, I think, really open, raw, honest, and that touches people.
And we didn't plan for it to be any of this.
No.
The whole reason I wanted to do this podcast was kind of share what my life through recovery looks like. And that was a real situation I had with my daughter, and I wanted to share it with you, and so I read it. Now, flashback about 2 weeks ago, that story and video on our Facebook started gaining traction for some reason.
Kind of out of the blue, right?
I don't understand the algorithm. I don't understand why it was.
Josh explained it to us, but I think he was making stuff up.
Yeah, he uses big words.
Yeah, he does.
If there's more than 3 syllables, I'm out.
It's all that digital mumbo jumbo.
Yeah. I think some of it had to do with our appearance on the TV show.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe some people checking that out.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, 2.5 weeks ago, that sat at about 60,000 views on our Facebook page. Today, I believe it's almost 200,000.
Yeah, it's had a lot of views in a couple of weeks.
A lot of people sharing it, a lot of people seeing it for the first time, and I've been trying to answer people as much as I can in their comments and their questions and their concerns. And so we thought we'd take a little bit of time here and just read some of the comments.
Yeah, let's do it.
This one is first from Carrie. Thank you, Presley, for allowing your dad to share your story publicly. You're an amazing young woman who has been through more than you should have had to go through at your age. I'm so impressed with how you reflect on the good, the bad, and just the plain ugliness of the situation, and now find happiness that has come from it. You and your dad have come a long way, and it's wonderful to see how proud you are of each other. Thank you, Casey, for sharing Presley's narrative with your audience. I know the decision to share something so personal wasn't made lightly. Well, it kind of was.
What do you mean?
I mean, I didn't really tell Presley that I was going to read it.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I just thought, because I should have.
Yeah, it worked out.
Yeah, luckily it did work out.
It worked out.
But it was something, because I remember if you sit down and watch the video.
Well, it was important to you.
I was going, I don't know what I was going to do with this. I thought I was going to bring it. I thought we'd read it and we'll see how it goes. And then it just took on a life of its own.
Yeah.
Here's another one. I cried the entire letter. I was your daughter's shoes growing up, only I never got the opportunity to see my dad recover. He was later murdered in the streets of Fort Collins, Colorado. I'm so proud of you for getting help. Your daughter is a tough young lady. She is strong-spirited and will be okay. What she has been through is hard, but hard times make strong people who know how to fight for themselves, life, and love. Thank you, Casey, for sharing your most vulnerable story. You're making a difference in people's lives.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah. And sometimes I feel like the praise that you get, feels good. Don't get me wrong. You know what I mean? But I still don't understand or think people understand how much doing this podcast and how much you guys allowing me to do this for you does for me. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, I get that it's helping people, and I think that's wonderful, and the praise is amazing. But if you only knew what it did for me.
So that comment is similar to many comments where something from the show, specifically Presley's letter, has really touched someone. It's therapeutic. It's therapeutic for you. It's therapeutic for them. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to see her father recover, but through her connection now with Presley, there's a vicarious experience of recovery, and it's a therapeutic connection. And in psychology, sometimes we talk about the collective unconscious, that we have a collective way of connecting with each other as human beings. And so even though she and Presley will never meet, she and Presley have met, and they've shared an experience in a way that benefits everybody.
The opposite of addiction isn't abstinence.
Nope, it's
connection.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to do with this podcast. Now, not everybody's happy with the letter. Or myself.
I've noticed that.
You know what I mean? And
you can't please everybody.
So before we get to this last comment, and I've got to the point in my recovery where I'm going to fight for recovery, but I'm not going to fight idiots.
Right. Okay. Sure. I support that.
Where people come at me like, well, it's not a disease or whatever. And I'm not going to argue with you in Facebook.
Right.
assassins.
I mean, American Medical Association since 1956 has identified addiction as a disease, but we're not going to argue about it.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
Right?
And it's a choice, and I understand the choice.
That's over 50 years, by the way.
Yeah. And I understand that. Yeah. You know what I mean? But there's
a lot of science.
Every once in a while, it's not a disease.
Research.
It's not a disease. And I go, okay. And then I even try to do it kindly. I go, look, I appreciate.
There's no point in arguing.
Yeah,
with somebody
I appreciate
that
your
says
point
stuff
of
like
view,
that. Right.
But I'm not here to argue this. What I do want to argue is the fact that recovery is possible, and if people do the work and find the help, they can get better.
Life in recovery is so much better, and I knew that before. But being your friend and watching you in recovery, I know it on a deeper level.
This guy says, "That's right. No kids or spouse needs that. Nothing anyone says can say different. Don't give him an out with, they learned something. He stole and wasted valuable years of their lives. No excuse." Now, the guy's got some points. And the fact...
That's generous, but okay.
Well, look,
yeah,
I'm not looking for excuses. I'm owning my addiction, and I've done some terrible things. Okay? But what I am asking is that you don't hold me to that standard for the rest of my life. Give me a chance to make amends. Give me a chance to fix what I have wronged and to be a better person. The whole point of life is growing, learning, and just keeping moving forward. If you want me to stay stuck back in that route, sorry, life sucks for you, man, because I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
And I messed up, and I know that. And I did some horrible things. I agree.
Resistance promotes growth. We've talked about that a lot on the show. And you would have never, prior to having kids, wanted your kids to go through that experience with you.
I've said it multiple times on this podcast. I wish my kids did not have to go through what they did.
However,
they are going to be stronger.
There you go.
They're going to be better. They're going to be more empathetic. They're going to be more loving. They're going to be more understanding.
And they're going to be educated in a very personal way on the harmful life that addiction brings to everybody. And so the reality is, because addiction is a disease and it does affect so many millions of people, that the more we talk about it and experience what it's like on both sides in recovery and after life after addiction, the more that we can eliminate this disease. But, some people,
I get it.
They want to keep other people down. And to me, that's more about them.
Well, it's interesting because if you go back and look at our Facebook page, Project Recovery with Casey Scott, you can find this. And I didn't have to attack this guy because the collective.
Everybody else did.
Yeah. They're like, whoa, how's it living in that glass house, bro? You know what I mean? It's like,
and so it's funny. I get a little notifications. And so lately my notifications, I need to turn them off just because my phone's going off all the time from Project Recovery.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that Every once in a while, we'll get a negative comment, and then all of a sudden, a flood of other people taking care of it for us.
Like where somebody's going, hold my Coke, watch this. You know what I mean? I got him.
Yeah.
Hey, well, so thank you very much for your support. I guess this is what we're saying, is without you guys, none of this would be possible. So thank you for being a part of our recovery family and allowing us to do this. We've got another exciting episode for you today. His name is Shane. You reached out on the Facebook page.
I did.
And said, I've got a story, and I'd love to tell it.
Yeah, it's kind of a little bit of a exposure for me. I'm not used to that, but yeah, I thought I'd give it a try.
Well, you've got your lovely wife sitting next to you, and she was like, this is so out of his comfort zone. And
I think it's out of hers, too, because she asked to not be mic'd up.
Okay. Well, we're glad you're both here, and we're going to hear your story. You're listening to Project Recovery, a KSL podcast. Welcome back to Project Recovery. I'm Casey Scott. That's Dr. Matt Woolley. Our guest today is Shane. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good.
So everybody likes to know a little bit of something about the guest before we get into the story. So where does the story of Shane begin?
It started in Peterson, Utah. That's where I was born and raised.
Where's Peterson?
It's in Morgan County.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's been telling us off air all these crazy stories of things he did growing up.
No, that was you.
Oh, that was me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Morgan's a good place. There's a lot of fun things going on there.
So, only child?
No, I had there's 8 of us, 4 boys, 4 girls. I'm second to last.
And did you grow up in a religious household?
Oh, yeah, very LDS, very strict in that way.
For those who don't listen to the podcast and know much about the LDS Church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Formerly Mormons. I guess you're not supposed to say that anymore.
Well, I think everybody's rebranding. What were you taught about alcohol at a young age?
That it was not acceptable. Had to stay away from it. So
the LDS Church has the word of wisdom. So it's no tobacco, alcohol, drugs of any kind, and even coffee and tea. And
so you were taught that at a young age.
Right.
How long did you listen until you tried your first beer?
I was 12 when I first drank.
And do you remember the circumstances surrounding why you had that beer at 12? Or was it beer?
It was beer. It was my brother. I found his stash. So I stole one from him and thought I'd give it a try. I took a couple drinks, thought it went bad, and so
you did what most. I'm not gonna say most, but
I think most kids think it tastes terrible.
Yeah, they're like, wait a minute, this is what the commercials are all about,
right?
Because this is horrible, and that's the thing is people's like, oh, it's an acquired taste. Okay,
it is.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I acquired the taste for it. I ended up in rehab, but you had a couple drinks and said, this is not for me.
Well, it wasn't that this was not for me. I thought it expired or something because it shouldn't taste that bad.
So that led you to go find more, or did you ask some questions?
No, I just through experimentation, quickly, grew accustomed to it and started drinking at that age.
Was that something
at that age
other brothers were doing in the family, things like that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, my older brothers both drank.
So how long did it take you before you kind of figured out you had a taste for it? Was that also at age 12? Was it pretty quick?
It was pretty quick. I was probably 13, when I got my first alcohol ticket.
From Morgan County?
Yep. So
let me ask you this. At the age of 13, when you get a drinking ticket, are your parents involved?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And how did they take that?
Yeah, they didn't take it well, but my household, you didn't really show your feelings that much. So
okay,
it was more important that we kept it as a family.
So you, well, like a lot of families do it. I was going to say LDS, but I think most families try
keep it in the family.
Keep it in the family. Let's not talk much about it.
Don't advertise your dirty laundry.
No.
Right.
And so at 13, you get a drinking ticket, and what does that involve?
Well, I lost my license before I ever got it, and fine, community service.
Now,
I didn't know you could lose your license before you get it.
So here's the crazy thing, and if kids get a drinking ticket before they're 21, they can extend your license out from 16 to 18, or they can even. So yeah, there's a lot of repercussions.
Even if you're not in a vehicle.
Yep.
Really.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
I don't know the exact law, but I know it can affect your driver's license moving
So
forward.
that happened to you, Shane.
It did happen to me, yes.
So how long before you were able to get a driver's license?
I think I had it suspended for 6 months, so I was 16 and a half.
But when you're living in a small town, your driver's license is your key to freedom.
Right.
And you want to get out.
Yeah.
So I'm curious because I'm assuming that the community service, the fine, and the pushing out your driver's license was meant to deter you from drinking again.
Right.
Did it?
No, it didn't. I kept drinking at just parties. That continued on until my mom got fed up with it, and she thought that she would get me away from my friends and send me to Colville to go to school.
Because it was your friends. They were the reason.
It was their problem.
Yeah, because not my angel.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
These guys are corrupting him.
So geography-wise, you got sent up the canyon to Colville, where, of course, nobody drinks up there, right?
Right. I mean, I think, walked into school and asked where the stoners hung out, and they said, they're probably smoking in the park. And I'm like, well, I'll be in the park.
See? Parking lot crew,
Insta
stoners.
friends.
What were your guys called again?
Hard guys.
The hard guys.
Yeah.
And so, but I mean, and we talked about it in the first segment, your only requirement to fit in is you got to be your willingness to do whatever substance they're doing.
Yeah, and just hang out and not be critical.
Yeah.
You know?
And they were like,
They're
come on in.
Very inviting. Yeah.
But if you're a jock and you walk into a high school from opposing high school and say, hey, look, I'm here to play, you're alienated. You know what I mean? It's tough to get into with that group.
Yeah.
This group, all you have to do is be like non-judgmental and maybe a willingness to party, and you're in.
Oh, yeah, definitely. But I'm curious, So did you identify so you were what, 15, 16 at that age?
Right.
Something like that. Did you identify as a stoner? Like, was that why you sought them out? Or did you just
wore
know?
it as a badge, the heavy metal shirt, the long hair.
Right.
That was me.
That was your crew?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, and how did they receive you up in Colville?
Great.
Yeah.
It was like,
tested the theory.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so now you're at a new high school, and you've already found a crew to fit in with.
Right.
So you're still drinking.
Right.
You're still partying.
Yep.
Are you so is it marijuana now too?
Actually, I'm allergic to marijuana. I mean, I tried it.
What effect does it have on you? I tried it a lot. I like he throws that in as an after. I tried it a lot.
Turns out I really am allergic.
You really tested that allergy theory. But what does it do to you? Because I don't think a lot of people realize some people are allergic.
Yeah, it just make me sick, and my throat would feel like restricted.
Yeah.
It just wasn't pleasant. So marijuana was not a big thing for me.
So alcohol became your DOC.
Right.
Now you're in high school. How are your grades? Is your home life good, or is it starting to affect everything?
My grades are terrible. I'm not going to school much. North Summit convinced me on how good of a school Morgan was, and kindly asked me to leave. So
they returned you?
Yep, I went back to Morgan.
So you had to drive up the canyon that's a 30-minute drive to school every day. Yeah.
Right.
And they said, well, maybe you should go to the one closer to you.
Right.
And so now you're back at Morgan.
I'm back at Morgan.
Was that just because of academics, or were you
I was getting in trouble. Yeah. My grades were terrible. I wasn't going anyway. So
the high school said, let's get you a new friend group. These guys seem to be corrupting you.
Right, exactly.
And so now you're back at Morgan. Do you fall right back in with your old friends?
Yeah. They were, there waiting for me. So I just continued on.
How'd your parents handle that, having to come back? They had sent you up there hoping it would change things, and it didn't. What was that like at home?
It was... Again, they didn't show their feelings a whole lot. Everything was kind of stuffed down. I mean, I got in trouble, but grounding here and there, and I was back at it. And
with your parents having 8 kids, I'm pretty sure they were in high demand all over the place.
Right. So, I mean, I was really shy, and kind of with that many kids, it's pretty easy to be lonely. I was kind of a loner, shy kid, and just
fly under the radar. Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Did your personality change when you were drinking? Because you kind of self-described yourself as a loner. But when you were out with your buddies and drinking, were you more gregarious, more out?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was a ticket to no anxiety. No, my shyness was gone. I was outgoing, just ready to party.
I had a conversation not too long ago with somebody, and this was he a very sincere guy who I think you'd relate to. He kind of describes himself the same way, younger, in his 20s, and he asked me. It was really sad, and he asked me, "Do you think that drinking would be good for me because it helps me feel better?" And it sounds like a silly question when we're talking about it here, but to him it was very serious because he wanted to know, as me, the professional, would I recommend that he drinks before he does social things because that was when he felt the best. Isn't that a sad commentary on how, first of all, it should let a person, the listener who doesn't think anxiety is a big deal, you really need to do your homework because it is miserable to feel anxious and miserable to feel shy, and especially when you're growing up and trying to fit in and have friends. And so anything, including alcohol or marijuana, something that takes that edge off and makes you feel like you can come out of your shell, is magical. And so I had to have a conversation with him that there are other ways to feel better. But honestly, that quick fix of taking a drink is very enticing when you're young, and that's the option that you have.
I don't want to speak for Shane, but I mean, for me, that was the biggest thing, is that I didn't know if I would be Casey, the fun-loving guy, without alcohol.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I thought, if you take this away, who am I? Because this has always been a part of my identity and who I've been since I was 14. And no longer is this guy with me, the alcohol. I don't know who I am. And more importantly, I'm afraid to find out.
Well, and I think, and Shane, you can tell me what your experience is, but I think people start to expect, like, they enjoy you when you're outgoing. Like, in the friend group, if you've been drinking and they know you that way, then when you're not drinking, you sort of feel rejected because they're like, oh, well, he's not that much fun. Casey's not that much fun. And, I grew up 10 years before you guys in Morgan, and it's a very small town still today. But even Casey, where you grew up in South Ogden,
yeah,
it's still kind of small, but it was very small back when you grew up.
Yeah.
And so you get a reputation. If you're not the fun-loving, outgoing person, then nobody really wants to hang out with you.
Well, listen to the other side of this coin. People who know Shane in his everyday life and all of a sudden run into him at a party and go, holy cow, have you met Shane? Because this guy is crazy. He's fun. He's laughing. He's dancing. He's picking up girls. I don't know if you did that stuff.
Tried.
Yeah.
The girls picked him up.
You know what I mean? But, and so all of a sudden, people are talking about that guy,
yeah,
and not
the person that you are without alcohol.
So I understand that it works until it doesn't work, and that's where the trap is.
But
that's the trap.
I'll go back to some of those comments on Facebook, and where people become very judgmental and blaming of others who have an addiction. That's a person who's not relating to that experience of being released, and I'm going to use the word magically, from your anxiety. It is when you're young and you want to be popular and you want to have friends and make connections, but you're too shy and you're anxious, and now all of a sudden you have a drink and boof, you feel like a different person, the person you always wanted to be. That's a tough thing to turn down.
Yep. So you're now back at high school. You graduate.
No, I don't. My mom pulled me out of high school when I was 17, and I went to work full time.
And how was that conversation? Did she say, listen, everybody's just wasting their time?
Right, exactly. The friends, the bad grades, you might as well go to work.
And you said, okay.
Yeah.
Was Hugh Davis your principal?
Yeah.
He was. He's a good guy. He was my biology teacher, but he was kind of a tough guy. Did he tell you also that you should leave, or?
Yeah, it was a consensus between the school and my parents. But.
Yeah.
And so now you go to work full time.
Right.
Which is, kind of cool, but kind of bad because now you've got a full-time job and you're making full-time money, but you're 17.
What were you doing? What kind of work?
I was in a sheet metal shop.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. What was that like?
It was good. You know, I good workout, I guess.
Yeah.
And so at this point, you're still drinking, I assume.
Yeah, now I have money, though, to drink. So I can drink as much as I want.
Are you still living at home?
I am.
When do you decide to move out?
So I actually, it was when I was 20, I moved out, and then got married right after.
Now, you're lovely.
Finish high school. You say that.
Did you end up finishing?
Yeah, I went to night school and finished.
Got your GED?
No, I actually got my full diploma.
Awesome. Let me ask you this. Why?
Something I didn't finish. I just needed to see it through.
I love it.
Yeah.
And so your lovely wife is sitting next to you, and she's going to correct you throughout this podcast to
Right.
make sure you get it right.
I'm sure you're, yeah.
Sure. Where do you meet her?
High school. Yeah, we were high school sweethearts.
Now, you can just nod your head yes or no. Was he known as a bad boy in high school?
Yeah. Kind of a bad boy in high school.
And you guys fell in love.
Right.
End up getting married at what, 20?
20, yep.
At any point, does your wife think that your drinking is out of control, or was it at this point?
Well, it was. That first year was pretty rough. So what we did is, after that first year, we moved to Syracuse and just up and moved and didn't really tell our friends where we were.
Were you trying to make a break from?
We just started over.
The Control Alt Delete restart.
Yep.
And that worked.
Well, it worked pretty well because we started having kids. We have 3 kids. I was still drinking on the weekends. I'd come up with family and drink, but it was not out of control.
It was a weekend warrior,
Right.
which I think a lot of normal people do. They make the weekends are made for Michelob, and
Right.
they start drinking, and they can usually turn it off on Saturday night or Sunday and get back to the work week.
Right.
And you seem to be able to do that for how long?
I did it for 3-4 years at least, or no, more than that, 6 years.
Well, I had a chance to talk to your wife before we started the podcast, and when this all came down, she didn't know you had a problem. So how do we get there? When do you start drinking through the day? How do you start?
So I start traveling out of town a lot for work, and there's not a lot to do other than work, drink, and go home. And so I started drinking a lot, and that started bleeding into my personal life to where I'm now have a couple beers during the week, and it just keeps escalating. It was kind of a slow process, but we got there,
What the folks you were working with, was that also part of their culture? So everybody was kind of doing the same sorts of things?
Yeah, when we'd go out of town, it would
Yeah.
be a big, all the guys would get together and almost a party every night.
You'd meet at a local bar or the
Right.
hotel bar and have a few cocktails and see where the night goes.
Right, exactly.
I've known quite a few people that have either had to change their work, the way they work, or kind of lock themselves in their hotel rooms, because that's common, I think, Casey, where when you travel for work, you have a lot of downtime, a lot of hours that aren't filled with anything. And
But
that
here's the
becomes
crazy
drinking.
thing. We've had people on this podcast where you go to these hotel rooms and they've got alcohol already stocked in there. You know what I mean? Remember we had, I can't remember his name, but he was like, I'm trying not to drink and I'm going to these hotels and
Right.
they've got mini bars in there.
Yeah, they're already
And so
stocked,
I'd have
yeah.
to call and tell them, hey, take everything out.
Take the mini bar out. Yeah.
But I mean, you talk about temptation.
Yeah, and I think you're unsupervised, you're bored, you fill in your time. I could see how that would be problematic, especially if that's what everyone was doing.
And you say it's a kind of a slow burn where, you started on the weekends and now you're going out of town and you're having a couple beers or a couple nights of drinking during the week.
Right.
But to end up on this podcast, it's got to get out of control.
Right. So I'm out of town so much, she wants to be close to family, so we moved back to Morgan. So we do, and it's familiar. It really, really escalates, and I'm starting to hide it.
Is it familiar and escalating because you're back around some of the people you did with it?
Yeah.
Previously.
Right.
And they're like, oh, Shane's back.
Yeah, I mean, now it's not a weekend visit up. I'm there full time, and you got Thirsty Thursday and
Taco Tuesday,
right?
Monotonous Monday.
So it's just.
And Morgan has a couple bars in Morgan, maybe.
Yeah, and we have a big mountain.
And a big mountain.
So are you more of an outdoor drinker?
Yeah. We got the side-by-sides. We'd go up riding around and drink.
And for the people that are city folk listening to this show, that's cultural.
Oh, yeah.
Like if you grew up, in rural Utah or rural America, probably, but definitely in Utah, we have these beautiful mountains, and people have, like you said, side-by-sides and four-wheelers and things, and that's kind of the common thing is you make a bonfire and everybody brings drinks, and that's the activity for the weekend.
Right. On Wednesdays.
Or midweek, yeah.
So now you're back home, familiar ground, it starts to become a problem. Does it start bleeding over into your job?
It does. I actually changed careers. With the new job, I'm home all the time. And I'm starting to have health problems. I have terrible stomach aches, and I find that if I drink, the stomach ache goes away. And I'm starting to have a lot of anxiety and panic attacks, and if I drink more, that stuff goes away. So I continue drinking.
At any point, are you hiding your alcohol from your wife? I mean, have you had a conversation with her where she goes, I think you need to slow down. You say you're going to, but you don't. You just start lying.
Right.
Because, I mean, that's what I did.
Yeah.
It sounded like you'd been there before.
Well, I mean, but I think a lot of addicts have that conversation.
I was going to say, that might go for everybody that's ever been on the show.
Yeah, where somebody goes, hey, you have a problem. You're like, no, I don't. We're cool. And then in your mind goes, don't let them see what you're really doing because they're on to you.
Right.
Yeah, so we had many arguments about it. So I went underground with it. I had a bottle in the freezer and a 30-pack in the fridge, and it would stay there.
Because that's the one you could point to.
Didn't want to touch it.
Yeah, you point to that and say, look, I haven't drank any.
But I have it hid everywhere. I have it out in the trailer. I've got it in the garage. And
so that was the fake out.
Yeah.
Looks like nobody's been drinking.
Master manipulator.
Yeah.
Right.
Go count them.
Yep, exactly. But I'm starting to drink, everywhere but work. And that lasts for a while. I keep it out of work, but then it kind of bleeds in, and at lunch I'll have a beer, or because I'm starting to get shakes, and I find that if I have a beer in the morning, a couple of beers at lunch,
you can stay it away.
The shakes will go away long enough for me to get off work, and I'll have a couple on the way home. But as time went on, the shakes didn't stay off as long. So I would have to break time, go sneak a beer. And then I'm drinking so much beer that I drink myself sober.
I don't get that.
Yeah, I just can't stay drunk enough. So I have to go to vodka.
Now, do you remember the moment when you found out that information and all of a sudden, because I can tell you from experience, you go from beer and then you switch over to vodka. Mine was tequila. Mm-hmm. And you feel new again. You feel young again because you're like, oh, this is different. Because you're used to a beer buzz. You're used to just keeping everything at bay. And, you're not really getting drunk, but you're not getting sick. And so I remember I'd tell my mom, I was like, you think I'm having fun? I'm not. I'm just trying to get to a base level with the rest of you guys. Because if I don't, then it's just ugly. And so then I remember when I was like, well, if I have a couple shots of tequila, this feels different. and it was kind of exciting again.
I always liked beer. I mean, for me, it was a little different. I didn't really love the vodka. It was just a way to get there. I could start off with 5-6 shots and then go back to beer and get to where I wanted to be. But eventually it ended up vodka all day. I might get a beer in here and there, but to stay drunk, it was just vodka.
Now listen to this. This is crazy because, it's like looking in a mirror. So now sometimes you're drinking beer just to show people that you're not always drinking vodka. Does that make sense? Because they don't ever see you drinking beer, but they notice something's off kilt with you.
Yeah.
So they got to have a reason why. And you can't say, well, I've been pounding vodka all day.
Right.
Because then I've got a problem.
Right.
So now you've got to have a beer to hide the fact that you're pounding vodka. Was that kind of like that?
Yeah. And then it came to a head to where I'm now in trouble for drinking. So I'm not going to drink around anybody.
Who were you in trouble with? Your wife, obviously.
My wife. And family's noticing, work's noticing.
What are they seeing at work? Like, now you're drinking all day. Mm-hmm. How's that affecting work?
Well, my boss is texting my wife saying, "Hey, you know what? Shane's not feeling well. Something's off." So,
and what kind of work are you doing at this point?
This point, I'm doing like estimating projects.
But are you blaming it on your stomach or health issues?
Oh yeah, I'm sick, so I got to go home. But he's saying he's trying not to rat me out from what he's told me afterwards. But he's telling my wife, "Hey, when Shane gets home, will you text me and make sure he makes it there?" He's not feeling well.
So he's trying to walk this line between, he doesn't want to totally rat you out, but he's concerned enough that you're not okay, that he's even worried about you just making it home.
Right.
And what's the quality of your work? Are you producing work that's worthwhile for the company, or?
I think I'm doing a great job. I don't know if I am, but
you still got the job, right?
Right.
Okay. So and for some people, you go into autopilot. You've been doing your job for so long.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Towards the end, you weren't getting the best of me by any means. No. But it was.
Well, I don't know how you used to show up at
hungover,
4:30 in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, and do the show still. Yeah,
a lot of times. And if you go back and look at some of the old videos, I was just an autopilad.
Yeah.
The bags underneath my eyes were huge. I wasn't quick. I was regurgitating old jokes, and it wasn't the best. Like right now, I feel like I'm the best I've ever been and having the most fun.
Yeah.
So when people come on this podcast, there's usually a rock bottom.
There is, and my health was it. And I was drinking vodka so much, and I wouldn't get drunk, and then I'd way overshoot, and I'd be blackout drunk. And so,
were you mean drunk?
No, I just.
See, now that's what's interesting, because you're no longer the fun, gregarious person.
No,
that you started drinking for, because it allowed you to be that person you always wanted to be, and now
it was anything to hide it.
Crazy, right?
Yeah. But anyway, I'm home. My wife sees that I'm home, so she comes home. This is like at 2 p.m. I wake up and I get mad at her for not getting me up for work and letting me sleep all day. Well, I'd gone up and I went to work.
Ooh.
And I came home and passed out in bed. And she says, "Well, we're going to the hospital. There's something wrong with you." So we go to the hospital.
I'm going to have you stop. Did you know?
No, I didn't. I always thought it was his autoimmune illness that was causing all the stomach stuff, and he was having weird things. I actually was like, does he have cancer, Parkinson's? I'm wanting him to go to all these doctors. I thought I understood alcoholism, but I didn't understand it at all. And I didn't realize what was going on.
And I think that's really typical. Even the person who's drinking may not really understand their alcoholism, but certainly, spouses and friends, family, we're scratching our heads trying to figure out what's going on, when in fact it is the alcohol.
So you go to the doctors.
Right.
What'd they say?
They ran all sorts of tests and everything, but then it came out that they checked my blood alcohol level, and I was drunk, blackout drunk, and so everything kind of came to a head.
Did you have an epiphany or an aha, or you were like, well, jig is up? Or did you still try to fight it at that point?
At that point, because they wanted me to go to detox, but they wouldn't take me to detox unless I admitted I had a problem. And so I did not admit it, and so they sent me home. I got home, and I was given an ultimatum to either move out or go get help. And so that's when I looked into treatment centers and went to Action Recovery.
Well, that sounds like a tough conversation.
Right.
Like what was that like? You're not willing to tell the professionals that you have a problem, so you go home, and then your wife lays down, an ultimatum, which I'm sure was out of love and concern. But how did you receive that? I'm sure it wasn't okay. I'll make a phone call.
No, I mean that was all so blurry to me. I mean I'm in full on detox. I'm sick as can be. She's yelling at me. And I think, you know what? I'm just going to go. I'm just going to go long enough to make her happy, and then we'll be back at it.
Casey, put the mic over here because we're micing you up anyway. I'm fascinated by the dynamic because here the two of you are, and we've been chatting, this morning and getting along great. But there must have been a time where you felt like you had to do that. Why did you feel like you had to do that?
Well, I don't think you would have gotten help unless I was willing to do that. The hospital was, he's really doesn't remember, but he was not going to go to detox. We were begging him to go to detox. And one thing that I think is kind of important to say on here is that we didn't realize at the time, but I didn't realize how dangerous it is to detox from alcohol.
Oh, yeah.
At home.
Right. Well, it can be deadly.
Yeah. And he did detox at home. And after we went to Action, the nurse there was like, oh, that was not a good idea.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just, I just felt like I had no idea. I knew something was terribly wrong, but I just didn't realize what was going on. And once I did, it all came into picture, all of it. Like all of a sudden when I realized what was happening, it all made sense. And so I was like, he needs help because he's been such a good, upstanding guy our whole marriage, done so many good things. I mean, yeah, he says he partied, but as an adult, he was a really stand-up person, a really good husband, a good father. And in the last couple of years, things had just gone crazy, and it just wasn't the same guy. So
it was out of love.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, great.
So you reluctantly agreed to go to a treatment center.
I did.
But you're not checking into one. Like you're not inpatient treatment.
No, I didn't want it to disrupt my work. So I went to an IOP.
And your whole plan was do it enough to set everybody back, and then I'm going to continue doing what I've been doing.
Right. That's what was going to happen.
That's pretty good, solid addict logic right there.
Oh, yeah.
It's so interesting that's so pervasively the way addiction thinking works. I mean, regardless of what your DOC is, I think most people's first go round with treatment is that exact thought process.
I mean, there are people who have made a career of going in and out of rehab just to appease the people in their family.
Sure.
Knowing that if I go do this, then I've got another 18 months of running and gunning, pissing people off, and you know what I mean? And before it comes to a head again, and I'll go again. And that's why I always say it normally does not work if you don't want it to work. But we're about to be surprised here because it worked.
It did. After I didn't think it was possible not to drink. I didn't think it would be possible to stop, and I had come to terms with I was going to die drinking. But after after I got sober and gave it a few days, I could start to see a light at the end of the tunnel that, this might be possible. So I went all in, and I was going to be the best
recovering
alcoholic ever. They was going to have to rewrite the books after I was done. So I got confident, probably overconfident.
I like that. Well, if you're going to be overconfident about something, that's a good thing to be overconfident about, perhaps, that you wanted to be the best at recovery.
Right.
Was there something in your recovery, and we've had a lot of people on here from Action Recovery, I think they do a wonderful job up there. Was there something that you did or something that they did that you went, this kind of makes sense? Because, I remember, people have heard me say this before. I remember talking to my therapist, and he goes, drinking's not your problem. I'm like, I'm pretty sure it is. That's why I'm in rehab. He goes, no, your problems are your problems. And we got to figure those out if we're going to get you any kind of help. Drinking's become a problem now, but originally drinking was your solution to many of your problems.
Right.
So did you have to do some work and figure out why you were doing what you were doing, or?
No, well, we did a lot of work, but we didn't have to, it didn't take long to figure out that, I pink cloud for about 60 days, and then I hit a brick wall.
For those who don't know, the pink cloud is what you graduate a treatment center with. It's, it's like, I often say, it's like, remember when we were kids and we'd go see the Rocky movie? And then after you walked out of the Rocky movie, you thought you could box anybody.
You're on a pink cloud. You're on cloud 9.
Yeah, you're just like, I can do anything.
Yeah.
And so when you do that from treatment, you walk out and you're like, yeah, life is better. Sex is better. Food is better. Everything's better because you're just on this high. But then eventually that high goes away and you're like, oh, man, I got some real problems I still got to deal with.
Right. So I had terrible anxiety, depression, and I have what I know now is OCD. And the clinical director there, a lady named Mackenzie Rodarte, she noticed it, and she told me, well, we ought to do some one-on-one and see what's going on. So I started seeing her, and
therapy's pretty cool, huh?
Yeah. It took a while, but, starting to process that. I still have really bad anxiety, and the OCD, but, with therapy and medication, I can live. I can.
Well, I work with anxiety disorders every day, and one of the things I like to tell people is that, you're a person with anxiety and whatever flavor of that they have, it could be obsessive and compulsive. It could be just general worry. It's kind of like you're tuned a little higher. You're just a little bit more vigilant, hypervigilant than other folks. And that can be very, very miserable. However, if you can work through and bring it back down a little bit and get it to a manageable place, that's sort of a sweet spot, because the most productive people in the world have more anxiety than the average folks. And that anxiety can help a person be organized, committed to things, get things done, get everything done before you go to bed or before you wake up. Now, granted, there's a tipping point where it goes from helpful to miserable, but it sounds like you've kind of, through some therapy and medication, helped yourself get back to managing it better. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm doing
Good.
A lot better than I was. So, I guess my reason for coming on here is, we got to get rid of this stigma of therapy and medication, that is useful and necessary. Because I thought I was going to quit drinking and I would just be, everything was going to be good. And it was a real wake-up call when I had these struggles and I had to get over this stuff before I could actually enjoy my recovery.
Yeah.
And I think that's so common that, like Casey was saying, that alcohol or drugs become sort of a solution to a mental health issue. And it's been going on so long for a person that they don't even realize that once that solution is gone, meaning they've gotten into recovery. They don't have their alcohol or their drugs every day. Now we're just left with our anxiety, and that's a whole nother ball of wax that has to be addressed. But I appreciate folks like yourself coming on the show and talking about eliminating the stigma of mental health disorders and treatment. I'm a psychologist, and I work in that every day. But it's more powerful when a person who's experiencing it is willing to open up and talk about it. That's how we get rid of the stigma. Guys like me, I can't get rid of the stigma. I'm working in it professionally. But people who've actually experienced it and said, hey, wait a second now. If I had cancer or if I had diabetes, people would recognize those as things that need treatment, and they wouldn't, judge me for it. But it's so interesting to me that a little kid growing up with anxiety and depression didn't do anything wrong, just inherited that predisposition. But because we can't see it, because we don't put a cast on it, people start to judge it and think, oh, it's just in your head, or, why don't you just get over it? Why don't you try harder? I don't know anybody that tries harder to make it through their day than somebody with anxiety.
My favorite is, oh, you're depressed? Why don't you just be happy? Shut up.
I know. What do you mean? Oh, you're short? Why don't you just be taller? It's just the dumbest.
And that's what I love about your story, Shane, is honestly, your story is probably more relatable to the majority of our audience.
Absolutely.
And I think there's so many people that are suffering in silence who don't even know about anxiety or what's going on with them. And the fact that you said, I got sober and I realized I still was stuck with the anxiety and the depression. So I went above and beyond and got therapy, and we talked about that. And now I'm doing that. Now I'm looking at you, Shane, and you're kind of you're right, this kind of shy, reserved guy. And I can't imagine what it took for you to reach out and want to be on this podcast. But I'm so thankful you did, because I think this is what the world needs to hear. So what is life like for you now? You just celebrated your 2-year anniversary of sobriety.
I did 2 years now, and life's great, I'm present with the kids, with my wife, I hope.
Let me ask her.
She's nodding.
What's Shane like today?
He's awesome. It's like having my old husband back. I know he drank before, but he still was much. It's nice to have him present and here with us again, and the kids love it, and we're happy. I don't know what else to say.
Oh, that's what we're happy. What more do you want to hear, right?
So what are your thoughts about Shane and his story today, Dr. Matt?
Well, first of all, I agree with you. I appreciate that you'd come on and share your story, especially because you've been a person with anxiety and you're shy. But it's a powerful story, and Casey's absolutely right. We've had every guest is appreciated on our show, but we've had some guests share stories about their lives that I don't even think you could make up for a movie. Just the most outlandish things. And those are interesting to hear about, but they're not as relatable as your story. There are so many people in our communities that are struggling with depression, anxiety, those sorts of things, and they don't know where to go. They may not feel like they can go ask for help. They might feel that they're going to be judged for it. And so it's easier to turn to something like alcohol. Some of the other ones that in our community here in Utah that get a lot of play are things like sugar, caffeine.
Opioids.
Opioids have been a big problem.
Marijuana.
But even everyday things that how many people are on their phones all the time as a way of trying to manage their anxiety.
Porn, gambling.
Porn is a big one. And so I appreciate that you're bringing your story out to the public to let everybody know, hey, if I can do it, you can do it. And I want people to do the math for a second. You started drinking when you were 12. Right. How old of a guy are you now?
I am 43.
43. So for almost 30 years, you had alcohol to some degree in your life.
Right.
And then you overcame it. Wow. That's impressive.
I'm so glad you stopped by. I've got one last important question for you. When you were 17 in high school and you were rocking a heavy metal T-shirt, what was the band?
Probably Metallica or AC/DC.
Yeah.
Classic.
Just classics.
Right.
The good stuff.
Yeah, ride the lightning, baby.
Yeah, Back in Black. Thank you for stopping by and sharing your story. I don't think you realize how appreciative we are that you did that. And I think how many people you're going to help because you were willing to get out of your comfort zone and share your story.
And I want to say one more thing. I love people from Morgan. Not just because I'm from Morgan, but I love people from Morgan.
Salt
We've had
of the
some
earth.
great guests on the show from Morgan, and I appreciate you guys making the drive.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks again for stopping by and listening to another episode of Project Recovery. And in case you forgot, Project Recovery is what?
It's a KSL podcast. See money?
Back in Black. I hit the sack.
No, that's terrible.
The contents of this program are for informational purposes only. The program is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician, licensed therapist, or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you've heard on this program. KSL does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, physicians, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned on the program. Reliance on any information provided on the program is solely at your own risk.